Okay, so we're going to take a look at our second half of our 4145 quiz review, where we look at different types of angles and also some angle relationships. So the first question here, we're referring always to this diagram here in the beginning. We want two obtuse vertical angles. So this photo here is kind of busy. There's a lot happening there, but let me exaggerate what two obtuse vertical angles would look like so we know what we're looking for. Those are two obtuse vertical angles in red. In blue, we have two acute vertical angles. So that's what we mean by the vertical angles. They kind of make that X and go vertical. Right, so one pair of obtuse vertical angles, I'll try to point a couple out that I can see. I can see a pair right here very easily. So that would be, let's see, we'd have angle GFH. And what angle would be vertical to G to F to H? The other one that I labeled there would be C to F to E. Okay, that's one pair of obtuse vertical angles. I'm going to show you another pair, and then I'll have you label them in the Edpuzzle. What pair do I have labeled here in green? They're obtuse and they are vertical. Let's label those in the Edpuzzle. So hopefully you said we have it there in green, angle BCG, vertical to angle DC to F. Hopefully you were able to remember that that was the letter F there hiding under my marking. Okay, name a linear pair with vertex B. So what we're looking for here, vertex B is here. So linear pair would be a pair of angles that form 180 degrees, right? That form a straight line. That's what we mean by a linear pair. They're adjacent to each other. So I'll give you the first one. The first one is going to be angle CGB. Okay. And what's the angle that lives next to angle CGB that forms a linear pair with it? Go ahead and answer that in the Edpuzzle. Okay, so hopefully you said, like the Jackson 5, as easy as 1, 2, 3, angle ABC. Okay? Name an angle not adjacent to. So let's focus on here. We don't want it to be adjacent to, but complementary to. So that's interesting because a lot of the times when we think of complementary angles, at least I do, I think of a situation like this where I have this angle here and this angle here, and I see, well, they can add up to 90 degrees. But here we want a situation where they're not adjacent. So let's move to the picture and see what angle are they talking about. First of all, to begin with, they want it to be complementary to FGC. Well, let's see where he lives. F to G to C. It's not labeled, but I can see I have a 90-degree angle, and then I have a 50-degree angle, which means FGC must be 40 degrees. So complementary to 40 degrees, okay, would be 50 degrees, all right? So here lives a 50-degree angle. What could we call that 50-degree angle? Answer that. So hopefully we said that that angle would be angle DEF, right? Complementary, but not adjacent to it. They just have to add up to 90 degrees. Okay. Name an angle adjacent and supplementary to DCB. So we might be able to answer this in a couple of ways. Let's see if we can identify where DCB lives. DCB is right here. So there's a couple of options. Adjacent and supplementary to it could be here. That would form a straight line. And then we could also go this way. Both of those, and notice they're vertical angles, so they're both equal to each other. Well, they're both adjacent to DCB and at the same time supplementary. So let's see, where's D to C to B is here. So the first one that I labeled would be angle BCG, or we could also say the other angle that I labeled there, angle DCF. Okay, both of those would be adjacent and supplementary. All right. Now we're going to move into a little bit of algebra. So most of the algebra situations you'll have will at least have an expression or two or a picture to go along with. This is a little bit tougher. All they tell me here are that the two angles are complementary. That means that they add up to 90. So I'm going to make a little table here, hopefully to make this easier to follow. We got angle 1 and angle 2. There's my two angles. I need to figure out what they are. I know that they add to 90. So let's just go ahead and call one of them X. And now let's see if we can figure out what this next sentence is saying here. The measure of one angle is 21 more than twice the measure of the other. So if this is the other, twice the measure of the other is 2x, and then 21 more would be 2x plus 21. So now I can take these two expressions and say, and we've done this in class before in some examples, x plus 2x plus 21 adds to 90. Now I'm on my way. So go ahead and answer this in the Edpuzzle. Tell me what these two... Okay, I think my recorder got paused. I'm not 100% sure where, so let me just double back for a second. I have two supplementary angles. One of them's x, the other is x minus 78. They add up to 180 degrees. So I set up my equation. I'm going to take x plus x minus 78 and set that equal to 180. So what I have now is 2x minus 78 equals 180. So I'm going to add 78 to both sides of this equation. And I have 2x equals 258. And now we divide by 2. So if I take 258 divided by 2, I get 129. So that's the first part of my answer is a 129 degree angle. And my other angle, there's two ways I could get it. I could do 129 minus 78. That should get me my other angle. Or we know they're supplementary. So we could do 180 minus 129. We should get the same answer to both of these. Let's see. If I do 129 minus 78, I get 51. And what do we get if we do 180 minus 129? We get 51. Okay, so either way, think about it. I needed two angles that added to 180 and their difference was 78. That's how we get to that. So now we have some perpendicular lines which could create complementary angle situations for us, or just a situation where an expression is equal to 90. So they tell me right away that FGE, which I can see over here, is labeled as such as a 90 degree angle. There's perpendicular lines there. They tell me right away that that's 5x plus 10. And we can see in the picture that that's 90 degrees if we have perpendicular lines. So what's our equation going to be? Answer that in the Edpuzzle. So hopefully we said that 5x plus 10 equals 90. That would be our equation. All right. Next step, solve for x. That's all we have to do here is solve for the value of x. Go ahead and do that in the Edpuzzle. So hopefully we subtract 10 from both sides. And I have 5x equals 80. And then I want to solve that, so I would divide both sides by 5. So we should get x equals 16. So that's the value of x, so that those lines would be perpendicular. Now we want to do the same thing here. But let's take a look at what's happening in the next one. We have some new information, so I'm going to clear my drawing out there. I have BGC. Right, let's look at where he lives. BGC. That's not a right angle. It's a acute angle. It's 16x minus 4. And then I'm also given CGD. Where's he at? CGD is down here, right? CGD is 2x plus 13. So for those lines to be perpendicular and that to be a right angle, so it says BGD is a right angle, what would be my correct equation this time? So hopefully we're looking at this now and realizing that the two angles are complementary. It's not that one of them equals 90. It means that their sum is 90. So I'm going to take the two of them and add them together and set that equal to 90. That's how I'll be able to solve for x here. Okay, add the two of them together. So solving this equation for x, go ahead and do that. Tell me what x equals. And that's all we have to do. We're not plugging back in this situation. Okay, so we have 18x when we combine like terms plus 9 equals 90. Okay, so now I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. So I have 18x equals 81. So if I divide both sides by 18 to solve here, I do get a decimal. X should be 4.5 if we solve that correctly. So in the next example here, we want to see what can be assumed and what cannot be assumed. So it says determine each statement can be assumed from the figure. Now, I want to point a couple things out in this figure. Notice that even though these lines look perpendicular, there's nothing in the figure to suggest that. There's no 90 degree angles written there. So that's one thing that we cannot assume. Okay, so we want to be careful about that. Anything else, if I draw two lines and they go like this, well, I don't you know, that those are vertical angles right there. Those two green angles, they're vertical. That's the definition of vertical angles. But we want to be careful about assuming anything's 90 degrees just because it looks as such. So NQO and OQP, NQO is here, and OQP is here. And again, the picture is drawn in such a way that those lines look perpendicular, but we're not going to assume that. So can we assume that those two angles add up to 90 degrees? Yes or no? So hopefully you said no. There's nothing here. They didn't tell us anything about perpendicular lines. They didn't tell us we had 90-degree angles, so we don't know that they add up to 90, even if they look like they do. Even if it looks perpendicular, we can't assume that. SRQ, where's he? Right here? Here's SRQ. QRP. Is that a linear pair? We've looked at this several times in this review. Is that a linear pair? Yes or no? Do we have enough from the picture to say that that is or isn't a linear pair? So hopefully you said yes, for sure. That's a linear pair. And then the last one, vertical angles. And we said vertical angles are vertical angles, so we just need to look at the picture and see if that's what we have. MQN, right here, and MQR. MQR is here. Are they vertical angles, yes or no? And that is no. Okay, what they are, they're adjacent angles. They're right next to each other. In fact, they're adjacent and they're a linear pair. Okay, that's what they actually are. They're not vertical. Remember, vertical angles are non-adjacent angles formed by intersecting lines. Okay, so you can go back over this review. Make sure if you have any questions on anything, make sure you reach out to Mr. Blaylock or myself to go over that. But the next step now will be to do your 1-4-1-5 quiz in Schoology. Don't forget you get 2 attempts at that. If the first attempt doesn't go well, make sure you reach out to us, and again, we can give you some feedback for your next attempt.